Oh, we're ready to go live? Okay. All right. Looks like we're live now. And welcome to... sorry about that. A little bit of a delay there. So let me know in the chat who you think's going to die this episode. So Game of Thrones has definitely said that they've not put a title out for this episode. They're being ultra cagey. One of the things they did change was they put Cersei Lannister up on the Iron Throne. So we think that we're going to get some Cersei action. My name's Linus. My primary channel is the Slow Boat Sailing channel, but my audience really isn't really into Game of Thrones. I did a couple videos on them, and they've been kind of our worst videos of the channel. We typically do videos about sailing news, and they weren't interested in sailing in Game of Thrones. But you can catch those episodes about, what's wrong with sailing in Game of Thrones and the top 10 sailing scenes in Game of Thrones. So I think I'm drifting into Cersei's picture there. Sorry about that. So there we go. Anand. Thanks for the question. No, we're not going to put season 1 up. We're just going to give you a recap of season 1. See if we can get to the right side. Maybe this is reversed. Oh yeah, that's it. I'm on the wrong side. That's right. Okay, so so we're going to give you a recap getting us here. So HBO's running the season 7 episodes right now. So Game of Thrones, where did they leave us? The wall came down at the end of season 7. The Daenerys Targaryen, the mother of dragons, the unburnt, hooked up with Jon, who bent the knee to her. They had the big meeting, which was really, I thought, one of the worst things in the show because it was so unrealistic. With all the leaders, totally Cersei would have killed everybody there had she gotten that wonderful opportunity to kill them all in the dragon pit. But she didn't, and we get to season 7, and the White Walkers are marching into the north. They've taken down the wall, and we're looking forward to this episode. We know that the Battle of Winterfell's not going to happen in this episode because it's pretty clear it's going to happen in episode 2. So since they're showing us Cersei, my guess is we're going to get to see some of the Golden Company coming to King's Landing. We'll see what's going on with Euron. Maybe there'll be an assassination of Cersei. Who knows? Who do you think is going to die in this episode would be my question. So Game of Thrones starts season 1. Ned Stark takes his children to King's Landing. Ned loses his head after Cersei poisons or gives strong wine to the king. And King Robert Baratheon, the man who unseated the Targaryens, dies from being gutted by a boar. Then the War of the Kings starts. You've got Joffrey on one side, you got Stannis on one side, you got Renly on one side, Renly Baratheon. Stannis has the best claim for the Baratheons, but nobody likes him. Everybody loves Renly, but Melisandre kills him with a shade, and so then it goes to Stannis. Stannis loses the Battle of Blackwater in season 2. Stannis dies in the snows when he's killed, and his army was basically defeated by that time. The young wolf his wife and his mother of the Starks, they die in the Red Wedding. Daenerys Targaryen loses her husband in season 1, but finds her magical powers to be the unburnt and is able to raise the dragons. And even though she loses her Dothraki hordes, she's able to take her dragons to Qarth. She survives what's going on in Qarth and the sorcerers in Qarth, and goes on to build the Unsullied, capture the Unsullied warriors in Astapor after she double crosses the slavers there and kills them with her dragons. Then she goes to Meereen, has a lot of problems in Meereen, and she is eventually sails from Meereen to Westeros in season 7. So she starts sailing at the end of season 6. Jon Snow is the last son of Ned Stark. Supposedly, he's up at the wall. He finds the threat from the others, the White Walkers and the Whites, and the Night King, and he takes over as the head of the Night's Watch, but he's murdered by his colleagues because they think he's too nice to the wildlings, the humans that live north of the wall, because he wants to save the wildlings from the Whites and the White Walkers. He's raised by Melisandre, and he leaves the Night's Watch, goes on and joins with his supposedly half-sister, although she's his cousin, we find out later on. And they fight the Battle of the Bastards, and they take back Winterfell from the Boltons, who betrayed the Starks in the Red Wedding. And Ramsay Bolton, the torturer, dies in the Battle of the Bastards. So in season 7, we get the Stark girls get rid of Littlefinger, and the machinations there are gone. At the end of season 7, last scene, we have Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen consummating their relationship, as we find out from Bran the Greenseer, who goes beyond warging powers but has powers of going back in time and seeing the past. He also talks to Samwell Tarly, and he is able to figure out that Jon is Aegon Targaryen, the son of Lyanna Stark, and the heir to the Iron Throne before the Mad King was murdered by Jaime, and the true heir to the Iron Throne. And so he has a better claim than his aunt. His aunt is, of course, Dany. So Dany's been terrorizing Westeros, and at the end of this season, they right before they had the big meeting, they lost Viserion to the Night's King. The Night's King was able to spear the dragon, raise it, and use the ice dragon Viserion to tear down that wall and walk into the southern regions of Westeros. So let me know who you think's going to die in this episode. Let me know who you think's going to die before the end of the series. Who do you think's going to sit on the Iron Throne? Will there be an Iron Throne? And let me know if you have any predictions for who that Iron Throne king or queen may be. Who are the people that are going to die in this episode? My guess is I'd put Cersei on the Death Watch, But the other question is that they did premiere this episode in New York. I've not heard anything from that premiere except that maybe Tyrion is in trouble. And so it's possible that Tyrion, who had a confab with his sister Cersei at the Dragon Pit, or just outside the Dragon Pit, that he is in trouble with Dany, who's always questioned his loyalties, as she questions the loyalties of all her people under her. So that's what I'm kind of looking for. What's going on in King's Landing? I don't expect the big battle of Winterfell. I expect some skirmishes in the north where the White Walkers kill everybody. But I don't expect the big battle with Dany and Jon's armies until episode 2 next week. So I was talking about the betting the other day, and the betting is that Bran Stark will sit the Iron Throne. I don't know where that comes from. That doesn't make any sense to me. But, I, as a finance professor, financial markets are betting markets. And we tend to think that the bettors tend to know better than just people talking without putting their money behind it. And so there may be some information there in the betting markets. I did a poll. Dany came on top of any person on the poll, but she only got 25%. And then 30%, 40% said that it was none of the above, which Bran Stark could have been none of the above, or it could have been nobody on the Iron Throne. I think you got to think that there's a big probability, bigger than 20%, that there won't be an Iron Throne, just because of the visions that Dany had in the House of Undying, where the Iron Throne is covered in snow or ash, and the ceilings are gone. And she just doesn't touch the Iron Throne, doesn't sit on it in her visions in the House of the Undying. All right, so it is 7:43. We have almost 15 minutes to go before the episode 1, season 8. It's been almost 2 years in the waiting for this episode, the longest gap, I think, in Game of Thrones history since they started back in 2011. I've read or I've listened to the audiobooks of all the Song of Ice and Fire, and also the associated Dunk and Egg books, and also the 2 history books too. And one of the things I think you take away from the books, and I think a lot of people will turn to them after this series is over because they'll have great Game of Thrones withdrawal, is that George R.R. Martin's story is much more complex than the series. And the other thing that the book readers will say is that George R.R. Martin's last book has been passed in a couple seasons. So we're in uncharted territory here, so there's no spoilers coming from the books. And even then, the books and the series diverge so much because of the complexity and length of the books, over 1,000 pages. I think the audiobooks are like 30, 40, 50 hours long, something like that. So you got to have a lot of time. I spend a lot of time in the year where I have very poor internet, so that's always helpful. But I'm also a big fan of this genre. All right, so can't wait to see what's going to happen. My hope is that we're not going to have a series in which it's as predictable as season 7. Now, I think there's a large audience. They want to see Jon and Dany live happily ever after, but I'm not one of those people. I think that one of the strengths of Game of Thrones was the complexity of it, the unpredictability of it, and I don't want it to necessarily be a Hollywood happy ending, and I'm rooting for a bittersweet ending. and an unpredictable ending. I think season 7 was way too predictable. It was also way too unrealistic. And I hope Dan and Dave pull it out in season 8 to keep the franchise going along. But it may be the mass market is more in terms of. I feel like we veered towards superheroes in terms of Jon and Dany are more superheroes than human, and we want to see more humanity and less superheroism. We want to see fragility, and so that's what I'm looking for. So, what am I thinking for season 1? I think Cersei could die, given they put her picture up here. You think Euron's plotting against her. Maybe the Golden Company is plotting against her. Maybe, I don't know how she would get there quick enough, but maybe, Arya Stark is going to get there and use her many faces, possibly Peter Baelish's face, before the Ravens get to her to kill Cersei. But the Valonqar prophecy says that the younger brother or daughter, but it's kind of vague. The Valonqar prophecy, the way that Cersei's interpreted it, was that Tyrion's going to kill her, but it could just be a younger brother or sister of anybody, not necessarily Cersei's younger brother or sister. So that's it's kind of ambiguous at this point. So what are your expectations for this series? Who do you think's going to sit on the Iron Throne? Who do you think's going to die in this episode? Who's got plot armor? Who doesn't have plot armor? My guess is that there's a lot of plot armor for. I don't know. It's hard to say. Really, there could be a surprise early. You could have Jon die early. Probably not. You could have Dany die early. You could have Sansa die early. You could have Tyrion die early. Maybe Dany's had enough of Tyrion. She doesn't trust him. Maybe she does. She thinks he's working for Cersei. We don't know. I think some of the minor characters could die early, although I think a lot of them are going to die in the Battle of Winterfell. So a lot of the warriors. So Jorah Mormont, I think, is a good candidate for somebody that's going to die in the Battle of Winterfell. Grey Worm of the Unsullied, everybody thinks is going to die in the Battle of Winterfell. Won't make it all the way to King's Landing. Some of these minor characters, especially the war characters, although the Hound, Sandor Clegane, we think we're going to get the Clegane Bowl, and that's going to happen when Dany's armies get to King's Landing. And so with the Clegane Bowl in the works, we think Sandor is going to get to meet the Mountain and have that final. And that was definitely previewed in episode 7 of season 7, the Clegane Bowl, that we're all looking forward to towards the end of the season. So, other people that could die, I don't think Euron's going to make it through the season. I don't think he's going to sit the Iron Throne, or if he does, it'll be really briefly. He could be betrayed by the Golden Company. He could outlive Cersei. Another person that I think may have plot armor but may not is, Jaime Lannister. He split with Cersei last season because she betrayed the living to try to keep the Iron Throne, and he split with his sister once and for all, seemingly, he could die at the hands of the White Walkers before that, but also the Valonqar prophecy makes it likely that he's the one that will kill Cersei. I would give him a better chance of killing Cersei than Tyrion. There's other questions about Tyrion's parentage. It's possible that Tyrion is not a Lannister. It's possible that he's a Blackfyre or a Targaryen bastard, that he was born out of wedlock with the Mad King was his father. But it's, possible. It's possible, but not for sure. All right, so I see Rival Survival. Thanks for your question. I don't plan to stream any episodes. This is a pre-watch talk, but not we're not gonna run the episode. So I'm gonna watch the episode, and maybe we'll have a reaction to it later if I feel like it. Otherwise, maybe not. So I'm interested in seeing what's gonna happen with the show. So I'm going to hang up if I can figure out how to do this. So I'm going to end it.